Welcome to Paddlecast with Betsy
and Billy. On Paddlecast, we talk to and about paddlers who are pushing limits, paddlers who are pushing their own limits, and pushing the limits of paddle sports.
In this week's news, we are recapping the Sella Descent, including with contributions from this year's winners in their own words. Then we will tell you about the upcoming Thames 200 Ultra.
We will recap two recent surf ski races in the UK, Hayling Island and the Moray Firth race.
We will share a brief race report on the Avon Descent, and we'll finish with the warm down.
Starting with the Sella Descent then, one of the most iconic marathon races in the world. So teams from all over the world came together in northern Spain. As we said in the preview, we had Australian crews, South African crews, all over Europe. There were Argentinians, there were plenty of South Americans actually, with even teams from Chile. The men's race was won by local legend Walter Bouzan and his new partner, Alberto Llera.
One of the things that I loved about this crew was their age gap. And it really seemed like they had the perfect combination of youth and experience. So Walter Bouzan is 47 years old and Alberto Llera is 22.
That's very cool. Yeah, Bouzan's more than twice his age. I've been in a K2 like that with Ivan Barrett. He was half my age at the time. And that was very fast as well, but we didn't win the Sella Descent.
There's always time. This was Walter Bouzan's 12th victory at the Sella, his 9th victory in K2. His previous 8 K2 victories were in an unbroken streak from 2010 to 2017. That was with his partner, Alvaro Fernandez-Fuza. And Alberto Llera is just right at the beginning of his paddling career. He just won silver and bronze medals in the K1000 and 500 meter at the European Under-23 Championships.
Yeah, so Walter drove the boat. He knows the course like the back of his hand. And whilst this is doing a bit of a disservice to Walter, in theory, Llera was giving the strength in the boat. But, you know, Walter's pretty rapid himself.
He definitely is.
I reached out to Walter after the race to ask him a few questions. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get audio for these. So, Betsy, you're going to give Walter's answers and I will do me. So, I asked Walter, how do you prepare for the race with a new partner?
So, on this one, Walter said, this year wasn't easy. So Alberto, is also from Ribadesella, from my club, but we only had 15 days of training together. He is on the national sprint team and finished the Under-23 World Championships 2 weeks before. The change from a short distance to the Sella is a big one, but he's a great champion.
I said, you're clearly a great river paddler. Can you tell us your secret?
So Walter was born and raised in Ribadesella, and since he was a child, he's always competed in the rivers of Asturias. It's like the Australian and the South African paddlers on the ocean. They've been there forever, and that's why they're so good at it.
So if anyone was watching the live stream, they would have seen about 11 minutes into the race, there's an island at Triangu, and you can go either side of it. Last year, Walter led the pack down the left-hand side of the island. And this year he actually dropped out the V-wash to go right, and he made big gains. He actually went straight to the front of the group doing this. So I asked him whether this was local knowledge paying off, or were you just trying the route with clearer water?
So Walter said, it's an area where there isn't much difference. If you are leading the group, you can do damage if you go to the left, but if you're in the rear, it's better to go to the right. That's what I did.
Just makes it sound so simple, doesn't he?
I thought this was such a fascinating answer because it's so nuanced, and he says it and it just makes so much sense, and you can go back and watch the video and you're like, oh, I can see how that makes sense. But yeah.
So last year he lost the sprint finish, which was actually to Jeremy Candy, who we mentioned from the World Games. This year, Walter took the lead 1 hour into the race, and he led until the finish 9 minutes later. I said, you held off some big moves from Boros and Erdelyi and Lopez and Vazquez. and you'd been leading for 9 minutes at this point. How confident were you towards the finish?
So Walter said, we were very confident in the sprint. My partner comes from training in Miguel Garcia's group with paddlers like Cravioto, Cooper, Aravalo, Germade, but he's also good at longer distances.
I mean, they really won that sprint. There was some big moves there. That was amazing.
They really did.
And I said, you have an exceptional record on the Sella. What does it take to win so many races year on year, and how do you motivate yourself to keep coming back?
So Walter said that he was born and raised here on the Sella. It's his home race, the one I've known and experienced since I was a child, and the one I always wanted to win. I've won world and European championships, but the feeling of winning at home in front of 100,000 people is the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd probably go for that as well. I mean,
doesn't that just give you like warm, fuzzy feelings? I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah. But I mean, it's easy. I mean, he's just said all you need to do is grow up on the river, paddle it every single day. And then you need to get like, some absolute amazing under 23 paddler, and you just go and do it. So we're giving away all of his secrets.
11 times that he did it previously too.
That's very true. Yeah. Okay. So to win it, you need to win it 11 times before, so you know the course and know exactly where to go. I almost feel bad for giving away his secrets here. So last week, Walter won a 1,000-meter race in the K2, and this week he won the 20-kilometer Sella. I asked him how his training schedule looks.
So Walter said, I am lucky to have a great training group with kids from all disciplines where they push me to the limit, but above all, I have a lot of fun. We combine long distance training with short, fast ones, including surf ski. That helps make everything more fun.
And I asked him what his next race in the calendar was.
So he said there are some minor competitions coming up soon that he might do, but the big one is in October, which is the Surf Ski World Championships in Durban. He says we'll try to do our best.
Yeah, now his best will be quite good, won't it?
It clearly will be.
Yeah, it was great to be able to ask Walter those questions. I've been following his season really closely. He's absolutely flying this year. He's been at the sprint events doing 5,000 meters. He was at the European Marathon Championships. He just won the Sella. He's going to Durban. He normally goes really well at Euro Challenge. I've seen him at the top end of the results several times. So I'm guessing he's going to be at the pointy end at Durban.
It'll be some good racing for sure. And I love how he said kind of having the variety in the training, the short stuff, the long stuff, the sprint, the marathon, the surf ski, and just being led by kind of having fun and enjoying the racing. And it seems like being proud of what he's accomplished. It seems like a good way to approach everything.
So let's talk about a few more of the top teams. So Walter Bouzan and Alberto Llera won in that final sprint finish, but they were in a tight pack of four who were together throughout most of the race. It ended up being Boros and Erdelyi in second, with Lopez and Vazquez in third. Lopez and Vazquez actually made a huge move with about 3 kilometers to go, where they sprinted left of an island and it wasn't an island, it was just some very shallow water. They all came back together, but that was a huge move. What was really amazing was that fourth place was Llorens and Plaza, who are an absolute powerhouse of a crew, and they looked powerless in the end compared to the other three crews. I was amazed at the standard. It really surprised me.
Yeah, I think they were in the V, right? And they tried to move out, at least a couple of times. And you could see, I mean, they were putting serious power down and just could not.
Yeah, nothing there.
Could not get past.
Yeah, it's amazing. But so there were a bunch of international teams racing, as we said. and a good contingent of South Africans were there. One of those South African teams was Matt and Josh Fenn, and I was able to speak to Matt about how his race went.
Thank you very much for joining us. This was your third Sella. What keeps you coming back?
How's it, Billy? I'd have to say it's the atmosphere behind the race. There is no other race in the world quite like it. In the fact that it's got a mass Le Mans start with 200,000 people watching. And it's easy to just hear that and try to picture it, but to actually be there and feel the atmosphere and the noise that many people can make before a start, and it's proud, patriotic Spanish singing an anthem with 20 seconds before the start, the river almost like it echoes. It's an unbelievable feeling, which is difficult to describe. And I think that feeling is probably what keeps me coming back, as well as the Spanish just being really accommodating, helping with craft and accommodation wherever they can. They're a very helpful bunch.
How did your race go?
This year's race didn't really go to plan. I think myself and Josh were relatively fit and hoping for a better result. But we were never in contention with the front bunch after tripping at the start. Josh almost jumped over me. He managed to grab the boat in time, but I was floundering in the water. So after a bad start, we had quite a lot of catching up to do. Managed to chase the second bunch, catch up with the chasing bunch. But by then, I think we were both quite exhausted and just didn't have enough in it to keep chasing. So we raced with the second bunch for the rest of the day and finished 11th. So not really the race we were hoping for, but otherwise still a good day out.
Tell us a bit about the differences between the River Sella and the South African rivers that you're more used to.
The Sella is a very unique race, I think. In comparison to South African rivers, it's extremely shallow. And if you are paddling in deep water, it's not moving because it's in the pools. So all the rapids are super shallow. The pools is where you can get a proper stroke in and actually paddle normally. Because, you can't actually put your full blade in the water in 30 centimeters. You have to paddle almost side on. It's quite a different technique of paddling with this. The Spanish have kind of gotten that waxed. So I'd say the difference between the Sella and South African rivers is the style of paddling, for one, and also the rapids at home are a lot bigger. We've got rivers where splash covers are compulsory, and the water almost throws you around. So our lines are dictated by where you approach a rapid and where you get thrown. So if you need to adjust halfway down a rapid, you need to know how to change your lines and deal with it. Whereas at the Sella, I feel like you are influenced more by the guys around you and where they decide to go if you are behind them in a group. So it's like paddling down a river in a marathon group, in a marathon situation. So a little bit of marathon racing and river racing in one on the Sella. Whereas South African river racing is read the water the best and let the river do most of the work for you. And then with a little bit of group racing in between rapids. So I'd say there's quite a big difference.
Is next on your race calendar?
Yeah, so Sella out of the way. I've got a couple of weeks good training ahead and looking forward to Fish River and then World Surf Champs and Piet Marlin 3 weekends in a row. It's going to be quite a busy time in South Africa, and we're all really looking forward to having the international. So that's next on the agenda for me. Hope to see you there.
Yeah, the most interesting thing that Matt said to me there was really about the South African rivers. And with the Fish coming up in a few weeks' time, I'm really starting to do my research on lines that I'm going to need to take. And I really know that it's going to be something beyond anything that I've ever driven on before.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting comment. And I will say I would love to go out to the Sella. And looking at it, I was like, you know what? I think I could probably handle the Sella pretty well. But then listening to Matt describe those South African rivers, I'm like, yeah, but not those.
Yeah.
Those are a whole other.
You have the results of the women's race.
Yes. So The top women's teams were not quite as close together as the top men's teams. They had a bit of separation between them, and it ended up being a pretty dominant win for the two Tanias from Spain. So that is Tania Fernandez and Tania Alvarez. They won by about a minute and a half. They had finished in second place last year and won the race in 2023. So I think it tasted sweet for them to come back and get that win again this year. And behind them in second place was Amaya Osaba Olaberi and Yara Tuse Fernandez. And then in third place, also about a minute and a half back behind second place, was Aratia Oso Irareta and Aranza Toledo Espinilla. And that third place team was actually the ones who had beaten the two Tanias last year. So definitely a little bit of rivalry going on there. And we actually managed to get some thoughts from Tania Alvarez on how their race went. Here's that conversation.
Thank you so much, Tania, for speaking with us. Congratulations on your win. It was a really impressive win. You were about a minute and a half ahead of the second place women's crew. Tell us how your race went.
For us, fortunately, the race went really good. We managed to have a clean start, which is a key for the Sella, because just think that woman, we start around with 300 paddlers ahead of us. So we just try to find our rhythm, focusing on holding up pace, reading the river, and trying to open the gap as the kilometers passed.
This is not your first win of the Sella, nor your first with Tania. What do you think it takes for a crew to win the Sella?
Tania and I, we have 3 wins each. Together we won twice in 2023 and 2025, and we also have another win in 2017 separately. Tania won in K1 and I won in K2 with the Mayor Saba. Which I think that makes the difference in winning the Sella is the ability to adapt to the river. That is, you must try to handle all the chaos of the start and read the water well and make really quick the decisions.
It seems like you and Tania have a really strong partnership since you've raced together and won together twice now as a crew. How long have you been racing together, and what makes your partnership so effective?
Yes, we have a strong partnership. We have been racing now together for 7 years, so we know each other's strengths and we can anticipate each other's move. We do trust each other's completely, and that's huge when you need to make split-second decisions. Tania, she's really good at that, and she usually doesn't make every decision, so I have complete confidence with her in the front.
Spain dominated the top of the race this year for both the women's and men's race, and the women's podium was entirely Spanish crews, which happens often despite having some big international names racing. Do you think there is a hometown advantage? How important is it to know the river well?
This year in women, there were 4 strong Spanish K2 versus the Hungarians on the start line, so the probabilities of Spanish podium were high. But definitely, I think that knowing the river, like the currents, the fastest lines, how the water changes, I think it makes a big difference. But note that here in Spain, there are Spanish athletes that the Sella is the main competition of their season, so they descend the river very often, especially those that live near Asturias. Anyway, in our case, we couldn't descend the river in K2 the previous days. I managed to do it in K1 on Thursday, and I could verify when I was told that this year the river had very little water, about 30 centimeters, which gone up to 50 on the day of the race.
Will you be back next year to go for another win? Is there anything you'd like to see change in the race in the future?
If we can, of course, we'll be back next year. The Sella is unique, the atmosphere, the tradition, the people. If we could ask something that could be changed, it would be great to have more live coverage for the women's race and maybe to have the possibility of starting more ahead. Just note that we started this year as the 303 and we finished overall in Ribadesella as 61. That is, we overpassed 2,042 boats. The race back there where we are has nothing to do with the men's one in the front.
To go from that start position and overtake 242 boats and be the and finish 60th is hugely impressive. It shows great paddling skills to be able to do that. There must be so much chaos going around them, and they must keep such a cool head to be able to get around that. Tania reiterates what every great river paddler says, in that you have to be able to read the river. I think before the race, ourselves included, thought that Panacinco and Panachepe would finish a bit higher up, but it just shows the skill and the local knowledge of the Spanish river paddlers, especially Tania and Tania. One thing that I think should be highlighted here is that whilst Tania and Tania probably know their ideal line down a river, they also need to be aware of a plan B and probably even a plan C with so many boats around them for the first 10 kilometers. There's so much going on, but I don't think that they'll have done their ideal line much until they'd been much further down the river.
Yeah, knowing that they started with more than 300 boats in front of them and then managed to pass more than 240 to finish 61st, it really makes their accomplishment even more impressive. All four of those top women's boats started right around that 300 position, and actually Panachepe and Panacinco had a slight advantage, being number 297. But as you say, Tania and Tania have the skills, they have the river knowledge, and of course the speed as well. We should mention that they finished fourth in K2 at the Marathon World Championships last year, right behind Melina Anderson and Ella Richter. And Tania Alvarez also took a silver medal in K1 at the European Championships last year, which was right behind Vonda Kisley. And that is on top of an impressive number of world and European championship medals from previous years. And some of the other paddlers in those Spanish boats on the podium have similarly impressive results on the European and world stage, which of course also just goes to show the depth of the field in Spain and just the level of marathon paddling there, which is, I think, really the same as we talked about in the men's race. But I think to the point that Tania has raised here about starting position, and to your point about how difficult it is starting so far behind, it would be great to see the Sella allow women's teams and mixed teams to participate in the pre-race time trial to be able to get into better starting positions. Because we do have to wonder how much higher up could they have finished if they hadn't had to start so far behind. I do think it would make for more exciting racing and probably also make it a bit easier for the live stream to cover the women's race, which, as Tania said, would be great. And I was certainly missing out on that watching the race on the weekend. So hopefully they consider making that change, but we'll see. And just a huge thank you again to Tania Alvarez Yates for talking to us about her race. But let's talk a bit more about the rest of the field, including some more of those international paddlers. In the men's race, it was just the Hungarians who made it onto the podium as an international boat. And in the women's race, Hungarians Panachepe and Panacinco just missed out on making the podium. But there were a good number of international athletes competing, including a big contingent from the UK. And we did actually have some Brits who made the podium in some of the different, in several categories that we haven't talked about yet. So, Billy, I think you had a couple of standout performances that you wanted to mention.
Yes, I do. Actually, Frankie Scrivener from Falcon in Oxford. She is 17 years old. She raced at the European Marathon Championships earlier this year. She won the under-16 K2 race last year in her debut Sella. And this year she raced K1 and finished third in the junior girls. We actually got a tip from one of our Paddlecast informants that both years her starting position was well above the bridge. So that's an even more impressive result.
That's really impressive for her. Really exciting.
We had more Brits on the podium in the mixed K2 race. Sam Rees-Clark and Will Stroud. They finished behind two Spanish teams and had a bit of a fight for second place, but ended up just 20 seconds behind.
That's great for Sam and Will. I know I talked to Sam about that after the Marathon Nationals the other week, and it sounded like she had been looking forward to that race. So ending up on the podium is pretty good.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I should also mention Tris Turner and Graham O'Regan from Royal Canoe Club, and they made the podium in the veteran men's category. So I don't know how many Brits there ended up being in the contingent, but I think it must have been more than like 20 or 30, if not even more.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. There was a lot of
really
people
good
there.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a bunch of different clubs represented, which is pretty cool. And I want to say, this is unconfirmed, but I want to say that the UK was the most well-represented country at the Sella behind Spain.
I think that would be a fair, yeah.
Yeah, definitely on my list.
Yeah, on mine as well.
But we do have a really exciting race coming up here in the UK. So back to the UK, very exciting race coming up 23rd of August, and that is the Thames 200 Ultra. So this is a 200-kilometer race down the navigable, non-tidal Thames. You can do it either straight through. So that's sort of an overnight race. You start the Saturday afternoon and you finish on the Sunday. Or you can do it as a relay team. Last year was the first time this race had ever run, and I did the live stream coverage. It was absolutely epic. I will be there again this year to cover the race. Really, really excited for it. Billy, you actually have, I said the record for this stretch of river. You have multiple records for this stretch of river.
I do have the record in both K2 and K1. So the K2 record I share with Tom Dawson. We did that last April on my birthday, and we finished in 15 hours, 44 minutes. And my K1 time I did just before we moved to the Netherlands, and I did that in 16 hours, 31 minutes. Both times I went down with really good flow, and both days were quite nice weather. So they're there if anyone wants them. You know, they're doable. Someone's gonna have to pick their day with lots of flow and go and do it. But it's a lovely course. The locks are really evenly spread out. The water's deep from the start, and you go through some stunning scenery.
Yeah, it's really cool. And of course, the Thames is the sort of most iconic and biggest river in the UK. You know, it's the one that goes through central London, which this race finishes before you go through central London, which I think in many ways is a lot nicer because that is not a very pleasant stretch of river to paddle. And so you basically just get all the nicest parts of the river that are paddleable and not filled with, you know, Uber boats and commercial traffic. So yeah, really, really cool course. I also think that the option to do the Thames 200 as a relay is part of what makes it unique, and that really makes it very accessible. So even if you haven't entered it yet this year, there is still time. I think entries are open pretty late, so you can still enter. And if you do it as a relay, you would have to do only a minimum of about 30 kilometers if you do one relay leg.
Yeah, and the relay works really well. It's actually really popular. Last year, I think it was the biggest sort of category. You can go, you know, K1, K2. You can have different craft racing. It doesn't just have to be kayaks. I think you can mix it up with a canoe on one of the legs. So it's just, you can cobble together a team of almost anything.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think we'll have some good relay teams doing the race again this year. We had some really good tight racing last year between Richmond Canoe Club, Chelmsford, and Royal. And a lot of that excitement happened overnight, actually, when one of the crews took a wrong turn in the dark, which it's possible to do. You know, there are a couple of, well, one point in particular where you can take a wrong turn, which happened. And we ended up with a bit of a fight to the finish and a win for the Richmond relay crew, which was, they went down pretty quick, really exciting racing. Yeah, I think we'll have some more good racing again this year. And we are planning to do a special preview episode of the race. So please do keep an eye on your feed for that. There were a couple of other races in the UK that we wanted to cover today as well, and that was 2 surf ski races. So we mentioned Hayling Island briefly at the end of last week's episode, where you raced, Billy, and you finished in 2nd place overall behind Toby Payton-Jones. Let's hear a bit more about how that race went.
Yeah, so Hayling Island, this was a GB selection race for Durban, but it was really poorly attended. It's probably largely due to the SLS Nationals going on at the same time. But I do know of some athletes who just didn't bother, which is a real shame. More for them, though, because conditions were brilliant for ocean racing. We raced over a single lap course, a couple of kilometers straight into the waves, a long leg into and across, and then a very technical downwind working across the waves. The race was won by Toby Payton-Jones. I'm really happy for Toby here. He put considerable time into me with the technical course and bigger conditions, and it really showed the skill gap between us. It was a 14-kilometer course, and Toby put 3 minutes into me. So that's a real good performance. Toby's 23, and he will be racing in Durban.
Very exciting. Looking forward to seeing how he goes. It seems like he's had another great season. What about, I think there was, this ended up sort of being in some ways, a good entry level to ocean racing type race for people who were at least more prepared for the bigger conditions. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, we don't often get big conditions in the UK. I mean, these weren't huge conditions. We had topped out about 4-foot waves. I mean, the wind gauge said 20 knots, and so it's pretty decent. And I think it actually picked up just after the start. So yeah, it's good conditions, and we need to be racing over this sort of stuff because we don't get to do it very much. You know, as we've reported on, like we did X Bay where it was pretty flat, Fishguard where you can often get some decent conditions. Was very flat, very foggy. We went down to Carbis Bay and, you know, right down on the southwest of England where you can get a nice swell, and we ended up in the flat there. Unfortunately, the Sussex race, which was another selection race, actually got too windy, and that race was called off. So we did have the Shoreham race in decent conditions. So it is rare to get a race with really good conditions in the UK. And we were, you know, you're just lucky. You've got to turn up to these races, and sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you race around in the flat.
Yeah, it is hard for us to kind of hit that sweet spot where it's big enough to make it interesting, but not so big that it's unsafe to run it.
Yeah.
But it sounded like a perfect race to kind of get those reps in slightly bigger than typical conditions, at least relative to what we get in the UK. And also, I think a good one for people who are not used to those conditions to be in more stable boats too, which we mentioned very briefly last week. But yeah, it's a good learning experience. I think, you know, going from paddling on flat water to paddling on the sea, even if you're a very good flat water paddler, is not as easy as Billy Butler makes it look.
Hey, it's taken me many years. I think I'm in my 3rd season, and I'm only just starting to feel really comfortable in that surf ski.
Well, it's clearly working. What about the race up in Scotland?
Yeah, so this was another surf ski race on the GB calendar. This race actually often gets good conditions. It's just it's all the way up in Scotland, so it's not often well attended from people in England. This was won by Will Steverley, who we've mentioned earlier in the year for his WWR exploits. Ivor Jameson took the lead after the first turn, and Ivor is a really skillful ski paddler. He took out a decent lead on the downwind, but the last 6 kilometers of this A to B course was sheltered by a headland, and Will Steverley managed to reel in Ivor, winning by 1 minute and taking the Scottish National Championships. Lena Kraus had a really good paddle to win the ladies' race.
It sounds like that one was a fun one. It looked pretty nice.
Yeah, really nice conditions. Actually, the race was changed from the Saturday to the Sunday because conditions were too big. So everyone just went out onto Loch Ness and did a brilliant downwind. Ivor posted his splits on Instagram from the Saturday, and he was hitting like 330s. And there's no flow, so that's a solid, honest. And he said it was really cruisy as well. That was just like letting the boat do the work. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple of races on Loch Ness coming up in September that
who was telling me they were going to do that? Yeah, Andy Burkett. If anyone's going to win that race, it's Richmond's Andy Burkett.
Yeah, I would probably bet on him too. I think I've heard from a few people who are looking at the Great Glen, though. There's the Great Glen, and then there's Monster the Loch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Great Glen, you can either do everything in one go, which is about 70 miles, or do it over 2 days. I think most of the surf ski paddlers would do it all in one go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. Love that one. Loch Ness can get some good downwinds sometimes. Well, what about the Avon Descent in Australia? We had that last weekend.
So I've been following this now for weeks after finding the water level Facebook group, and I've been transfixed by weather patterns in Australia and whether or not they're actually going to get enough water to run the race. And the water levels peaked on race weekend, absolutely rising, in perfect sort of time. I saw one report that said actually the water levels had gone up 70 centimeters on race day from the day before. It was absolutely ideal. The race was won by Luke Dooley. This was the second year in a row he's won. A really talented paddler from Western Australia. But you actually picked up some very interesting news about the first female SUP finisher.
Yeah, I was really excited to see this. So it was Toshka Goswell, and she's the first woman to finish the Avon Descent on a SUP. So Avon Descent, 124 kilometers over 2 days. And Toshka posted a recap of her race on Facebook. So she said that she swam a lot, but she still made it down with only a damaged fin box and a few bruises. I think it looked like there was a fair bit of whitewater, probably related to the river level going up, is the way that you were just describing.
Yeah.
And she said there was pretty strong headwinds on day one and some tricky, shallow, flatwater pools that made the conditions really challenging. She was actually worried about getting timed out, which is often, I think, that would definitely be a challenge, especially in the headwind. And she said it rained a lot that day too. Day two, that was, I guess, when the river gauge jumped up so much, and she was no longer worried about getting timed out at this point, but said that the lower part of the river was in flood. Each rapid got bigger and bigger. She had to kind of, take a few breaths, talk to herself before going through the last few big ones. And so she's done the race previously in a plastic kayak, which she said is a lot easier. She said rocks are no problem and you can just plow over them. And also that, of course, it's a faster craft. But she did say doing it on a SUP gave her a better appreciation of the lines, and she got more of the views as well. She says, I saw so much more than I had seen on my last 3 attempts of this race with the breathtaking views. So I thought that was kind of a cool perspective, not just that she kind of has that achievement of being the first woman to do the race on a SUP, but she kind of has that extra perspective of having done it in the kayak as well.
Yeah, that's really cool for her to be the first woman to do it. Hopefully she's sort of leading the way and we'll get more entries next year. Do actually realize that we've been calling it the Avon, which if you are in the UK, our rivers spelt the same. And if you're ordering makeup from a little magazine that gets posted through your door, it's pronounced Avon, but it's the Avon in Australian.
Ah, okay.
So
you have corrected my pronunciation.
Well, also mine. I've been pronouncing it Avon, and I'll continue to pronounce it Avon because that's the way it should be said. But the Australians say it Avon.
Okay, the Avon Descent, and apologies to the Australians.
Yeah, unless that was just the one person that I heard saying that and they're getting it wrong.
We're not going to be able to apologize for every pronunciation mistake that we make, but we can try.
Not. I'd have a long list.
It is. Let's move on to the warm down. Billy, I think you had one item that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I saw something online actually on Performance Sea Kayak. A sea kayaker called Tim Haynes has shared his story online about an expedition from the Shetland Islands to Norway, which is a massive expedition. As good as it is reading about successful expeditions, it's absolutely vital to hear about failures, to learn and make adjustments for your own expeditions. It's great to read these. You can really, fine tune things and learn about stuff. Tim overcame some major issues with steering failure, and he had to jury rig some foot stirrups so he could still steer. But it was actually chafing, which ultimately led to his helicopter ride. It's worth noting that Tim did nothing on the expedition that he hadn't tried and tested in training. But once into the 3-night trip, he found that he was getting wetter than expected. And as a result, he was chafing in the armpits and bottom region. He was unable to open his barrier cream with wet, swollen hands, and he decided to use painkillers instead. As the pain increased, Tim escalated the painkillers to cocodamol, which again, I'll say he had tried. Ultimately, though, this led to hallucinations. And very sensibly, he decided to press his alarm on his Garmin InReach when he realized he couldn't follow his compass bearing any longer. The doctor in Norway suggested that it was a combination of dehydration and fatigue that had made the cocodamol react with him like this. But, really, thank you, Tim, for sharing this.
Wild story. I'm glad that he was okay. And as you say, it was really, really interesting learnings. And he tested everything, which is, I think, what everyone in the ultra endurance space says, right? Make sure you test it before the race. But even when you do, sometimes it's just the particular combination of factors that comes from, pushing yourself. You don't do a 20-hour warm-up practice paddle for a 30-hour paddle, right? It's that would never make sense. And so sometimes it just things combine in the wrong way. And glad that he was okay.
And I will say, though, I haven't done the story justice. So search up Tim Haynes on Facebook or search through Performance Sea Kayak and find his write-up because it's worth a read.
Yeah. And as you say, it's so important for us to share when things do go wrong. There's so many stories that I've read like that have really, even just reading a story like that, I always kind of file it away. And it's like, okay, note to self, don't do what that person did. So it really helps everyone make better decisions. Definitely. As much as we can, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again so much to all of the athletes who joined us to talk about their races. And thanks to all of our listeners. Hope you enjoyed the double episodes this week. We have got some more really exciting stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks, including on the Thames 200 Ultra, the Sprint World Championships, and the Marathon World Championships. So make sure you subscribe and follow. And if you liked what you heard, please do leave a comment, a review, or share it with your friends. So until next time, see you on the water.
See you on the water.